welcome back to another episode of Aviation Champions. I'm your host, Miranda Gahn, co-founder of Lexero Aviation law firm. This morning I had the great pleasure of meeting with Mark Ward. He's an ATC expert with an in-depth ATC background, and he works for a company called Changeis as a contractor working on staffing. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being with us today. So tell us a little bit about your background and what it is you do as a contractor for Changeis.
Okay, I can start with my background, which is, I think, extensive. Some people, compared to a lot of other folks, it's not all that extensive, but to me it is. So I started as a pilot, believe it or not. In 1977, I got my private. I went through and got my all the way to CFI, double I, multi-I during that same year, 1977. And then my job was going to be a pilot for the rest of my life, I thought. And something strange happened in 1981. The air traffic control strike happened, and I'd already taken the test. I flew on AWACS when I was in the Air Force, so I already knew about air traffic control a little bit. And so I went ahead and took the test, got prepped for that, and did real well on the test. And never heard from the FAA again until the strike happened. And when the strike happened, I actually called them and said, do you have any openings going on? They said, where have you been? We've been looking for you for 3 months now, and can you start next month? So with that, I went to Oklahoma City, went through the training there. My first assignment was to go to ZID. That's Indianapolis Center, for those that don't know that.
Okay.
And I spent 10 years at Indianapolis Center as a controller. I went on to the regional office from there up in Great Lakes. That's in Des Plaines, Illinois. Spent a couple years there, then out to Chicago Center. I picked the slower facilities. I went to Chicago Center for 6 or 7 years, first line supervisor, second level supervisor. Then I went to New York Center as the deputy manager, air traffic manager, and then to Atlanta as the air traffic manager. And I spent several years there, then went to the regional office, got promotions in the regional office. I actually retired as the director for the Eastern Service Center. They're the ones that provide all the staffing support to all the facilities on the East Coast. That's
Wow.
kind of how I explain that real quick.
That is
overview.
impressive. And air traffic control is a really intense job. So that's very impressive. So very clear, you're an expert. Tell us a little bit more about your contracting role.
Oh, so my contracting role is I've been doing this about 2 years is all. The contract was awarded to Changeis, and it's really a staffing augmentation contract. As somebody within the FAA, the ATO, which I'll talk about in a second, if anybody needs a staffing person, a person to fulfill a job, whether that be a program analyst to a PhD, an air traffic controller, a tech ops person, anything they need, they can get that through the contract with Changeis, and I'm the program manager for that contract.
Well, that's impressive. So it says that you do staffing for the entire ATO. For our audience, tell us what the ATO is and what that means to them.
So a lot of people realize there's the FAA out there. Everybody always knows the FAA, but in 2020 or 2003, we stood up what was called the ATO, the Air Traffic Organization. The Air Traffic Organization prior to that was just air traffic underneath the FAA. They actually were split out to be a separate entity that never really came to fruition. A lot of it was nobody really wants to see the FAA separated from Air Traffic Organization, so it's always been kind of muddied the water. The Air Traffic Organization we have a COO, Chief Operating Officer. We have vice presidents. Well, no other government agency has those type of jobs within there. We have directors. A lot of them have directors, but vice presidents, COOs, that doesn't happen. So it just never happened to where it was split off. But that's where the Air Traffic Organization, ATO, came from.
Wow. Well, that's impressive. So using and leveraging your expertise and background in ATC, you work to find experts to fill roles in the ATO that are greatly needed. So tell us, since you were working closely with filling staffing, what do you see as the biggest challenge, both in ATC in general, and then perhaps with regard to staffing?
Well, of course, I think BNATS, which is a brand new air traffic control system, we just we got to add an acronym to everything. So it becomes BNACS. And that brings along some challenges to it. We want to put it in pretty quickly because it's funded and it needs to be blasted out there. But there's really three main areas that BNACS is concentrating on. Number one is the radar systems. Our radar systems are very old. I don't think they've changed in the last 50 years whatsoever. A little upgrading here or there, but it's still the same kind of technology we've always had. Communications is probably the biggest change that I see coming, and it's going to be dramatic change. In the I'm going to say the old days, which was like 2 years ago. In the olden days, when we wanted to change a frequency or we needed to get on a frequency to reach a pilot's maybe a little bit further away, 200 miles away, if it wasn't hardwired to get to that other frequency, we couldn't change frequencies. The idea now is to change it to where we can just instantaneously change to whatever frequency we need to contact a pilot on, no matter where they're flying at within the system. And it really helps with, if we have any kind of outages of any kind, it helps us to be able to broaden the base of where the pilots are flying to where we can talk to them almost all the time. And then the last one is the consolidation. Hasn't come to really be talked about very much yet. We have 20 air traffic control centers within the continental United States. Of those 20, they were always restricted by 1,080 miles based on our technology we had from 50 years ago. Well, what really has happened over time is technology changed and it could allow us to expand beyond that 1,080 miles. That would mean you could take a facility like an Atlanta center and maybe a Memphis center and combine them up into one building, one set of staffing, and it would help a lot when you start thinking about consolidation to get everybody together in one place. It'd be a big building. You're talking years to be able to build that type of building, but that is part of the BNOT's plan, is to consolidate into those facilities.
Well, that's impressive. It sounds like there's a lot of work to do, but it's moving in the right direction.
I think it is.
How do you see it evolving?
Well, like I say, the consolidation is probably the biggest one to evolve. That's probably going to take 3 or 4 years. Of course, we have a union that's going to have to participate big time with that, and whether they want to do it or not will really be a big change for them. Some of your TRACONs, even like not too far from me is Atlanta TRACON. That's a pretty good sized TRACON. They operate a lot of airplanes around within the northwest corner of Atlanta, but they could really broaden that out to operate more of maybe all of Georgia rather than just the Atlanta airspace.
Wow.
So consolidating some of the smaller facilities into the larger facilities. We're doing a lot of that across the nation. Up in Michigan, we've consolidated a lot of your smaller facilities into one unit. So it's not something new that we're doing. It's really just a matter of making it happen.
Okay. Well, I have 2 questions left for you, Mark.
Okay.
Tell us, one, what does this mean for your common aviator? All these changes that are coming, if you could, in 1 or 2 sentences, tell us what that means for them. And then if you could also tell us, what advice would you give someone who's interested in pursuing a career in ATC?
Okay, let me go back to the first one real quick. I think for the average aviator, it should be transparent, mainly because they'll be able to talk to ATC anyplace, anytime they need to. Where today, if they get below the coverage of the antenna or too far away from that antenna, ATC can't talk to them and they can't talk to ATC. So to me, that's the biggest plus that we have, is being able to talk to a pilot that gets low in airspace or too far away from the audio antenna, from the communication.
So improvement of safety based on improved communication,
Absolutely.
which is great.
And so how would somebody get, so there's, we send everybody, mostly everybody, there are some changes here. We send mostly everybody to Oklahoma City to go through what I used to refer to as a screen. It's a training environment. You're supposed to be able to go out there and learn about ATC, of what you need to know to go on to your first facility to learn more about ATC. It's always been where we would go to Oklahoma City to find out who had the knack and ability of being an air traffic controller. That's what it was really intended back in the late 50s, early 60s, probably when it first came about. People would get trained just enough to be able to take tests and then move on to the next phase. Take test, move on to the next phase. Today, that environment is we want to do more training. We want to bring people in training. We're sending people to colleges, which we did 10, 15 years ago, but now this is a new brand. We're sending people to colleges to learn to be an air traffic control specialist. You can also go through the military. You can go into this guaranteed job into the Air Force, become an air traffic controller. When you get out in 4 or 6 years, then you can pretty much transition right into air traffic control within the FAA at the same time.
Wow.
So there's many ways to get hired on. You have to take an original test, then your hiring takes place, and then you go to Oklahoma City to get trained.
Well, thank you, Mark. So please tell our audience if anyone is interested in getting a hold of you, either as a mentor to ask more questions about ATC or as an expert, how can they find you?
Well, number one, you can always find me on LinkedIn. It's Mark Ward, W-A-R-D, have middle initial D. If you want to email me, it's mark@markward.com. Can't get much simpler than that.
All right.
So email me anytime.
That's great, Mark. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciated the information you shared, and we look forward to staying in touch.